Hello, my name is Abigail, and on this channel I talk about books and things that I'm passionate about. And while I'm incredibly passionate about my 2025 stats, I am even more so passionate about this video in particular, because this video right here is my best of 2025. I want to start off by saying that if you hated these books, that's great. Please, let's have conversations in the comments. I personally enjoy talking about books on both sides of the spectrum. Did you like it? Great, let's talk about it. Did you hate it? Great, let's talk about it. I do have a total of 10 to talk about, with 5 additional honorable mentions, so let's get into those. Despite this book being a reread, it deserves a mention every year that I read it, and that is The Song of Achilles. I annotated the absolute hell out of this book. This is my second copy of this book. I don't have access to my first copy, so I was like, let me pick up another copy so that I can reread it in preparation for a tattoo. I got a tattoo this year. I have a whole vlog about me rereading my favorite book and then tattooing it on my body. I have a tattoo on my rib cage right here that is inspired by this book, so I needed to obviously read it again and annotate the absolute hell out of it. I have read this book almost every year that I have been since I've read it. I listened to it a couple times, I've read it a couple times, and this time I decided to read it and listen to it at the same time. So I did not hear a word without having turned the page. This was a good time for me. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, because if you know, you know. But ultimately, despite it being a reread, it deserves at least a mention on this list. Ordinarily, I wouldn't put rereads on here, but maybe I should in the future, because I'm thinking I read it, so it counts, right? But like rereads, it's to be expected. This is my favorite book I've ever read in my entire life. I am that basic white girl who loves this book, and I will make no apologies for it. All right, moving on. The next book on this list that is not a reread, but I did annotate it. This is The First Ladies, and I enjoyed this. This is actually by an author duo, Marie Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murray. This book is about our president's wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, and Mary McLeod Bethune, who become fast friends. And they become friends in a time when it was not really done to have a friend who was black and a friend who was white. You know, it's that kind of that time frame. It's the civil rights movement era, and these two come together to make strides, some positive strides in our history, leading into where we are today. This book, I gotta be honest with you, I didn't know if I was gonna like it, because I'm not a historical fiction girly, but I obviously liked it quite a bit. This one was pretty damn good. I will now look for more books by these two authors. I enjoyed the absolute hell out of this book when I didn't think I would. So, honorable mention for that one. Next up, we have The Deep. This is by Alma Katsu. Funnily enough, in my head, I had confused this one and Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. And I thought, because that one's about killer mermaids and this one's about the Titanic, for some reason those two book synopsises in my head merged, and I thought I was going to be reading a book about killer mermaids on the Titanic. Thankfully, I was completely, I guess my mind was shown the truth when I attempted to Google why these two books were not the same. I was told instantly that they are, because they're two different books. But this one was a surprise. I have known about this book for quite some time, and I just kept putting it off. I ended up buying it this year in October. It met one of the prompts on the horror bingo, which I'm participating in. It met the water prompt for that, and I had already had some interest in reading it, and I really didn't want to. I didn't have any water horror that I hadn't read up until this point, so I didn't really want to, and I hadn't picked any up that were on my shelf. So I wanted to make sure that things that I was buying for this, I actually had an interest in reading, not just because of this, not just because of the horror bingo. And that's largely because of a book that was on my worst of the year. But this book is about Annie, and Annie was a passenger on the Titanic. She was working on the Titanic, and she goes to a asylum, and at the asylum, she slowly gets better and decides that she's ready to re-emerge and join the real world. And she suddenly finds herself on the Titanic sister, the Britannic. The caveat is she doesn't remember what happened on the Titanic, so as she's kind of learning what happened, we're bouncing back and forth between the Titanic and the Britannic, and things are happening on both ships, and we're coming to a catalyst, and I enjoyed the absolute hell out of this. Alma Casu is now somebody that I'm going to purposely look for when they release new books. I will go through backlists. I really enjoyed this book. It was pretty damn good. I enjoy Titanic stuff in general. There's something about a tragedy that always is alluring to me. Something's wrong with me probably, but I enjoyed the absolute hell out of the Deep by Alma Katsu. Next up for our honorable mentions, we have Well Actually. Well Actually is by Maisie Eddings, and this book I have described as Call Her Daddy, which is a podcast where a girl is like super straight face, like she just kind of asks really strange questions, and Hot Ones, which is where they're eating things as they're asking questions. And so Eva is the host of this like sort of podcast where it's the mix of the two things. And one day after work, she sees her ex has gone and made a video about how, like, teaching men how not to be douches. And it kind of triggers her because she's like, actually, you did all of these things to me. So she stitches it, calls him out, and it goes viral. And what happens is he's actually the host of his own sort of podcast. She's the host of her own podcast, but her podcast is like backed by like a BuzzFeed type place. So it's not like her podcast that she produces. She's just the host of somebody else's like produced podcast, if that makes sense. And so they both have these platforms, social media platforms, with which to sort of guest star on each other's thing. And he and the network for her podcast, they come together and determine that it would be mutually beneficial if they continue doing episodes together after they do an episode where she is confronting him and they're talking about it. Well, we go from there. It's sort of enemies to lovers, second chance romance, forced proximity. I enjoyed it. Fake dating also. I enjoyed it. It's very trope heavy. It's not for everyone, but it was for me. Then the final book I don't expect anybody to give a shit about, but I give a hell of a shit about it. And this is Inside the World of Big Brother, Behind the Mirror by Taryn Armstrong. Taryn Armstrong is a podcaster for the network Rob Has a Podcast. Rob Has a Podcast is hosted by Rob Cesternino, the greatest Survivor player to never win the game. Not Boston Rob Cesternino, the other Rob, as he's affectionately referred to. Well, he started a podcast network called RHAP, Rob Has a Podcast. And on this podcast, he has a lot of people who are obsessed with reality TV. I love reality TV. So I naturally gravitated to this because he puts out podcasts about Big Brother, Survivor, other reality TV shows, Drag Queen, Dancing with the Stars, all types of reality TV shows. I really only watch the ones that I give a shit about, like Traitors, Survivor, Big Brother, stuff like that. Those are my kind of reality TV shows, like Trapped in a House, Stranded on an Island, voting each other off one by one, that kind of shit. I love Taryn Armstrong's coverage of Big Brother. And now you might be saying, okay, this podcast, great. So what? This is a book about a kid who was obsessed with Big Brother going into an adult who is obsessed with Big Brother, who spends all of his free time during the summer watching the live feeds. What are the live feeds? The live feeds are camera footage, 24/7 camera footage of the contestants of Big Brother, filmed constantly and published or uploaded to the internet on a live basis. Taryn Armstrong watches all of it and then tells us about it on his live feed updates. So now that we have set the scene, Taryn Armstrong wrote this book. This book is by a reality TV nerd for the reality TV nerd. And while this book taught me personally nothing, because I knew most of it, if not all of it going into it, you are given sort of the correlations between Big Brother and what was happening at that time in the real world. And you're also given like a brief history. Well, it's a history of Big Brother. And like I said, it didn't necessarily teach me anything, but I loved it. I bought the book and I also purchased the audiobook because I learned that Taryn Armstrong, my absolute favorite podcaster in the entire world, actually narrated his own audiobook, so I double supported it. If you are a reality TV nerd and you like Big Brother, I think that this is kind of something that you might want to visit in the future. It's probably not something that's going to teach you anything if you are already pretty invested into Big Brother, but if you like reality TV and you would like to know more about Big Brother, or you're thinking about getting into Big Brother and you would like to know the history of the show, it's definitely something that you should consider picking up. I gave it a 4.5 stars, not because it didn't deserve a 5, but just because I can't give a nonfiction book a 5 that didn't teach me anything. So that is that for our honorable mentions. And now we will move into our actual top 10. I have so many books in front of me that I actually have 3 separate stacks that I will be pulling from. And number 10 on our list is going to be Wild and Wrangled. This is the 4th and final book to the Rebel Blue Ranch Quartet. These are a series of interconnected standalones, each featuring a different couple. This is the 4th and final couple that is introduced, and this couple, this one hurts really. It cuts. I have to be so for real. It cuts quite deep. This book is a second chance romance. They were high school sweethearts. They are this book is told in then and now, but it's told, I believe, like, I mean, there's also some letters in here. This book, listen, I can't say much because it's the 4th in this. I mean, you can definitely read this without having read the other 3, but I think that their story actually spans all 4 of the books because they pop up while they're still awkward around each other in all of the other 3 books. But this book is so good. It is so good. If you like cowboy romance, you should pick up this series in general, but this book right here did something to me. I think about it quite often. And this is Wild Wrangled by Lila Sage. Next up, and I'm cheating a little bit, we have Bride and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I would say I enjoyed Bride more, but Mate was a pretty close second, and I couldn't imagine putting anything above Mate that I listed previously. So for that reason, it became a set, and it got sort of ranked together rather than separately. If I had just done Bride, it probably would have been a little higher up, but I digress. This is a duo. Maybe there will be more books, but it's a romantasy paranormal romance written by Ali Hazelwood, in which we have a vampire and a werewolf. And the vampire is a high-ranking official in the vampire world's daughter, and the werewolf is an alpha. It's sort of enemies to lovers, sort of forced proximity. It's just a good time. And I can't really tell you anything about Mate because that would sort of spoil parts of Bride. So just know that this was a 4-star for me. I enjoyed the absolute hell out of this. This made me an Ali Hazelwood believer. I have read a book by Ali Hazelwood that didn't do it for me, and this did. This is why I will continue to pick up Ali Hazelwood, despite not necessarily loving everything I have read by her in the past. The next up, I'm also cheating a little bit. We have 3 of the 4 Mountain Men matchmaking novels. This book, starting with the 9-month contract, moving into the 7-year itch, and finally the honeymoon phase with the 4th book to release in spring of next year, or no, this year, sorry. This year we have this is about 4 brothers and their niece who is meddling in their lives and trying to find love for all 4 of her uncles. Starting obviously with 9-month contract, this book is about a woman who is trying to become a surrogate, but there is a weight limit and she is over that weight limit, and he is a 30-something-year-old man, 40 maybe, I'm not sure, I forgot already, but he is a man of a certain age. He's not married, but he wants to have a kid, and he wants to have that kid by any means necessary. So he's looking for a surrogate. She wants to be a surrogate, and the niece bumps into her, and thus the story is born, and also a baby. Next up, we have the 7-month itch. Once again, the niece is meddling. And when the family goes away for a vacation, and, well, I can't really tell you what the vacation is, but it'll spoil the first book. But anyways, she is a family friend, and so they're in Mexico together. And the niece meddles and tells the people in Mexico to tell them that there's only one bed. Forced proximity, only one bed. This is enemies to lovers. It is a good time. And then finally, we have the honeymoon phase. Well, finally for now, we have the honeymoon phase, and this is friends to lovers. Once again, the niece is meddling in the lives of these uncles, and it is such a good time. Teddy Hamilton narrated all of them. Always a good time. Next up, and very specifically, we have Lights Out But Not Caught Up. Lights Out by Nevessa Allen is a dark stalker romance where the main female character is on the internet looking at masked men, and what does she see but Josh? And Josh, our dear Josh, he happens to know her, like in real life. But the best part of this is that she likes to be stalked, and he will stalk. And sort of like, I don't know. This book gives. I was kicking my feet, screaming, laughing, giggling, having the very best time. I definitely recommend this. Not so much caught up. I will keep you updated as the third book, Game On, releases later this year. Next up, we have We Used to Live Here, and this is by Marcus Clearwer. This book was originally some kind of creepypasta Reddit post or something, but it got published, like he reworked it and published it. This book is about a woman who one day she gets a knock at a door, and she opens the door, and it is a family, and the man says, "We used to live here. Would you mind if I give my children a tour?" And I can't really say much more. This book is incredible. In this book, you have mixed media, you have like clues throughout, you are kept guessing the entire time. There were scenes that were so creepy that I still think about them. This book, I can't wait for The Caretaker, which is set in the same like universe as this one. I can't wait. I'm very excited about it, and I will be picking that up when it is released. Next up, we have a little bit of a shocker for me. This is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by B.E. Schwab. I ordinarily don't necessarily get along with stories like this, but the best way I can sum this up is this is 3 toxic lesbian vampires spanning many years. One of them is 1532, one of them is 1827, and one of them is 2019, and their stories are interconnected. And I can't say enough about this book, but everything I would say is probably a spoiler, so I don't want you to know anything, but just go into this book and enjoy it. I have not always agreed with V.E. Schwab. I've not always agreed with these types of stories, but this is it won a Goodreads Choice Award for a reason. I know that ordinarily Goodreads Choice Awards are like popularity contests, and I don't think this is much different given the fact that we have V.E. Schwab as a big name, but this book does deserve a fairly decent amount of the hype that it has gotten this year. Next up, we have Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a sapphic romance about 2 women who are attempting to become astronauts, and this book, I cannot say enough positive things about Taylor Jenkins Reid in general. This book makes you give a shit about a topic that you don't care about. Carrie Soto is back. Suddenly I give a shit about tennis. It's not that I never gave a shit about space, but to look at this book from the perspective of these characters, I give a hell of a lot more of a shit about space than I did prior to reading this novel. This book, we're counting down to something, and I cried, and it's Taylor Jenkins Reid, and honestly, there's not much more that I can say. Just read the book. I mean, just go out. They have it at libraries. They have it at many places that sell books. Find a copy of this book and read it. I implore you to read this book. Initially, when I had read this book, I was rating it a little lower, but when I can't stop thinking about a book, I learned that it should have been higher. And this book was originally 4 stars. And I probably said something in the review that I did where I read my most anticipated of the year. This was my most anticipated book of 2025. I did a whole video about this, and I even went outside and did some space shit, okay? This book, it's not as good as 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but nothing will ever be Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and it is not fair of me to, I mean, look, they're both written by by Taylor Jenkins Reid, but it is not fair of me because these are not one-to-one comparison books, and I should not compare them on that same level, because it's like, for me, my very favorite book of all time, The Song of Achilles, I didn't really care for Circe nearly as much as The Song of Achilles. So because of that, Circe was a little bit lower of a rating than it probably would have been if I hadn't read the best book of all time written by that author. And I feel very much the same about this. Circe on its own, without having read Song of Achilles, would probably have been rated higher. This probably could have been a 5-star read if I had not read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And while I will not ever regret reading The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, as it is one of my favorite books I've ever read, because this is by the same author, because I know what this author is capable of, I mean, if this was Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, it would have been my number 1 book of the year. But because it's not quite, it is my number 4. And that's really all I can say. I don't want to make it seem like it's a bad book. It's just that Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo was like a God tier book, and this is an S tier. That's not bad. It's just 1 tier below. Next up, we have Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. This book is about bodily autonomy, about teenagers and a time when teenagers got pregnant and they were forced to go live in homes until they delivered the babies, and subsequently giving those children up for adoption, because this really did happen. This really did occur. But in this book, there's witches, and so that is the horror element, but that's not the part I gave a shit about. I really, the birthing scenes were visceral, raw, and real. They hurt me physically, emotionally, and mentally. I am still scarred from them. This book, on its head, many people have mentioned that the witchcraft feels like a last-minute add-on, and Grady Hendrix himself has mentioned that the witches were the last thing to be added because he felt he needed an actual horror element to discuss on podcasts, like the podcast that I'm specifically referring to where this interview was conducted is the Books in the Freezer podcast. It's a horror podcast, and he mentions on this podcast that the witches were the last thing to be added. And while it does feel like that, I can separate the fact that this occurred and look at the real world horror and be disgusted, and I can hurt for these girls, because while I wasn't forced to go live in a home for pregnant teenagers and give my child up for adoption, I was a very young mother, and I was treated and looked at much the same way that these girls were. Not as badly, because it's a different time. People were more accepting of young mothers in the time that I was a young mother versus this time. But this book, once again, it won a Goodreads choice for a reason. You know, the last 3 all have won Goodreads choice awards, and it's not for nothing. I get that for the most part that these are popularity contests, because there's another book that was probably not deserving to have made a Goodreads choice award, but this one definitely deserves it. I know that this book is very polarizing. People either love it or they hate it. I am someone who loves it. Next up, we have Till Summer Do Us Part by Megan Quinn, and I just can't help but smile at this book. This book put Megan Quinn on the motherfucking map for me, because I had heard of Megan Quinn in the past, but I hadn't read anything by Megan Quinn, so I was like, let me pick up this book. Let me see what this is about. The cover's cute. I actually bought 3 of them with all the different covers because I'm actually mentally unwell. But I picked up this book and I read it and I fucking loved it. I can't say anything else about it other than I loved it. This book is about Scotty, and Scotty, she works in kind of a dude bro sort of atmosphere, and everyone's married, and one day she kind of is like, oh yeah, my husband too, or you know, she makes an offhanded remark about her husband, just trying to fit in. However, Scotty's not married, and she is promptly called out on it. And then she says, well, I'm just not wearing my ring because we're on the rocks. And her boss happens to be married to a marriage counselor. They're having a marriage retreat, and she gets roped into going, and her best friend's brother, who is a billionaire, he got a lot of money and time because he is not working. So he's got time to go on this retreat with her. And There is like improv, and it is so fucking hysterical. It is hilarious to me. Megan Quinn did this, and now because of this, I will continue to pick up Megan Quinn. I read actually 2 more books by Megan Quinn this year. They did not make this list because the rest of the books that I rated were higher, but Megan Quinn, like I said, this book put Megan Quinn on my radar, my motherfucking map. So I will continue to pick up books by Megan Quinn because Megan Quinn writes hysterical. Like, it is very rare that I have an actual like laugh out loud where I can't control it. Like a giggle will sort of spill out of me, and Megan Quinn does that to me. And for that reason, this is my number 2 book. Finally, I don't think this is an unpopular opinion by any means. I do believe that this is a book that should have won an award this year instead of one of the aforementioned books. But this is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. This book, if you have not read this book, I implore you to go read this book before somebody tells you what occurs. This book, okay, so in the first like 20 pages, Jess is a waitress and she goes to the bathroom to clean it. Something happens in the bathroom. She ends up leaving work early. She goes home. There's a commotion outside. She finds a boy in the bush. She has a confrontation with the boy's father, and she somehow ends up kidnapping the boy. And listen, that is just like the first 20-25 pages. Like, I'm not even joking. On page... Yep, page 20. Page 20, we're having this happen. 22, she turns her attention to the kid standing there, not sure what to do. A boy, looks like small, probably 5 or 6 years old. Page 22, we find this boy. So this all happens very quickly, and it only intensifies. There is not a single moment where you are having an opportunity to breathe. We go on the run and we're traveling and we're traversing, and you very quickly realize that things are not what they seem. And please go read this book before somebody tells you the plot points. Just go read this book. This book, in my opinion, should have won the Goodreads Choice Awards for most best horror of the year. This is my best horror of the year. This is my best book of the year. And I have a book on my shelf. It is Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. This is my second book that I will have read by Nat Cassidy. And when I tell you I'm counting down the seconds, minutes, and hours until I am able to read Nestlings by Nat Cassidy for Winterween, I think Nat Cassidy puts his whole heart and soul into books, because I've heard many times where people have read like his more recent works like Mary, Nestlings, and this one, where he actually dedicates these books to people in his life. And he has like a 10-page sort of forward or afterward, where he's just talking about his life and his father. And, you know, afterwards starts on page 285, and it's like, you know, it's not a whole lot of time, but, you know, 292, yep, 285 to 292 is the for afterward. And I just think that this book is worth reading, if for only to get to that point where you get to read his thoughts, because there's something about Nat Cassidy that this is my first book for him, but if we ever even come close to this again, it will have been worth my time. And this is very much how I feel about Taylor Jenkins Reid. If we ever come close to 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I will continue to pick up her books. If it ever comes close to When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy, I will continue to pick up Nat Cassidy. And I think that is, I mean, listen, if I find an auto-buy author every year for the rest of my life, how many auto-buy authors will I have? Somebody do the math in the comments. That is going to be it for today's video. I feel so much happier after getting this off my plate, because I actually filmed this once before and deleted the footage. I know, we're not going to talk about it, but I feel better. I feel great. I have knocked this one off my list. I had a good time doing it, because who doesn't love talking about their very best books of the year? Anyways, with all that being said, I am going to close this video, and I will see you very soon for a new one. But in the comments down below, let me know what your best of the year was. Let me know if we had some similar best of the year. Let me know if any of these were on the worst of the year, because I do like talking to you in the comments down below. And I will see you very soon with another one. Bye.